Hello everybody. So today I got my cold plunge working again. I got the $29 cold plunge from Amazon. It's $29 Canadian after tax. Very cheap. And actually it's better than the other ones that I had. The other ones I had two other ones. They both leaked and they were way more expensive, especially the first one was like over $100. So this like very Chinese one is really good. Has like Chinese letters on it. Um, yeah, it's smaller, but it fits. It's good. It was hard getting back in there because while I was waiting for it for like 4 days, I wasn't cold plunging. And the thing about the cold plunge, when I do it, that's like the hardest part of my day, and it's done. I have other hard parts in my days, but the cold plunge is always hard. It's always hard. So doing that, it's like I almost win kind of like a mental battle in my day. The hardest thing is like done. So yeah, I like the cold plunge. And also, when I do the cold plunge, I have better self-control throughout the rest of the day. And so, yeah, I think that's very important, especially for me. Um, yeah, so. Um, and I'm wearing the America First hat. I shaved my head again today. Um, I like to keep my hair short, and I just have a buzzer, and I just go over my head like every angle a bunch of times, like tons and tons of different times, as much as I can, so I don't miss any spots. I don't have anyone to shave my head for me, so I have to make sure I do it right, and then I check with the mirror and I go back and hit any spots I miss. Okay, and then but I want to wear the hat because these hats for like $75, and I don't get to wear them anywhere because it's winter time, and I also don't go anywhere. I don't really go out. I just kind of go to the gym. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the Trump oil meeting. I really liked it. Um, I watched the whole thing. So they Trump launched this like secret attack on Venezuela and captured the Venezuelan president or prime minister, I'm not sure, but he captured Nicolas Maduro, and now they're gonna take all the oil in Venezuela. And I really don't know a ton. I know Venezuela is like a failing place, like it's really bad there, failing country or something like that. And yeah, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't agree with it, but um, I think they're going to take the oil anyway. So he brought all the oil executives into into a big meeting in front of the press, and they were going to have a negotiation about all of this oil and who gets to extract and how everybody's involved business wise. And so they had the biggest names there, or the biggest companies there: Exxon, Chevron, um, Conoco, something. They had all these big names, and I kind of really liked this meeting because it was like Trump was playing them like masterfully, like a masterful sales person, and that's who Trump is. He is the negotiator. He's the deal maker. That's his persona essentially, or that's kind of who he is as a president, and that's his whole thing. Like he wrote The Art of the Deal. He's all about business and everything. But I thought that it was I liked watching it basically, and there was a funny moment there with Darren Woods, the CEO of Exxon, I think. Trump said to him, this is like around the 14 minute and 30 second mark. He says to him, how's business at Exxon? And then Darren says, that's good. And Trump says, it's about to be a lot better, isn't it? And Darren Woods just like laughs, but I thought that was hilarious because it's like it's like the most high level negotiation thing, and $1 billion deals, and just funny, like he makes that like little comment, and yeah, it was really funny. I think Trump is naturally quite funny. You have to give it to him, whatever your opinion is on him, but he is naturally quite funny in the way that other presidents just aren't. If you compare to Biden and other presidents. Okay, so yeah, I think he played those guys like a fiddle. He played them really well. He said, if you don't make a deal, I've got 25 other people. But anyways, and then it was kind of a media circus as well, as it always is. But, Trump, he actually answers questions, which is a good thing. I think Biden, he was like barely answering any questions, and they were basically scripted. But, yeah, and I always liked the back and forth between Trump and Caitlin Collins from CNN. Yeah, Trump, everybody knows he really hates CNN. Calls them fake news and all that all the time. But Caitlin Collins was the woman, the CNN reporter, who did like an interview or a town hall with Trump before, I think, the 2020 election or something like this, or I don't even remember which one it was. It might have been the 2024, but I think it was like the 2021. And yeah, Trump totally defeated her. It was great. Yeah, so bread and circus. We enjoy the circus sometimes, right? At one point, and I know a lot of this is like propaganda and everything, but at one point Trump said that I'm a representative, nothing more. And I actually appreciated that comment. Even if it was, you could say propaganda or something, or he's just a liar and whatever. But I appreciate at least that he said that, because that is actually true. Maybe not his intentions, you could question that, but it is true that the president is a public servant. So the president is a representative of the people. That's how it's supposed to be. Same here in Canada. The prime minister, all the government are supposed to be public servants. They're supposed to work for the public. They're supposed to be elected. The public is supposed to choose who they want. And then the people in the government appointed by the public are supposed to, choose other people who work in the government, and that's how it's supposed to be, right? So I just like that he said that, because that's a real note, right? President is supposed to be a representative and nothing more. Okay, yeah, and then I want to talk about defensiveness, the narrative of defensiveness, even when it is aggression going on. Because I noticed this, okay? So when I watched the press conference negotiation, and the people were asking Trump the question about, the reporters were asking him about capturing Maduro and whatever, and Trump was saying, one thing he kept trying to add on was that he was saying, well, if we didn't do it, China or Russia was going to do it. If we didn't capture Maduro, if we didn't go in there, China or Russia was going to go in there. And we don't want China or Russia as our neighbor. So I just want to, I don't really like the term deconstruct, but I want to point out what I think that is. That is controlling the narrative, as it, everybody knows about the narrative, I think, by now, or that there is such a thing as a narrative. People have agendas and so on. But it is putting an aggressive action as a defensive action, a preemptively defensive action. So that is, well, if we didn't do it, Russia or China would have gone in, and then they would have been there, and then they would have been in our sphere of influence. They would have been our neighbor. They would have been right next door to us, and we can't have that. We don't want them. We don't trust them as our neighbors. They're our adversaries. We do business with them, but we do not trust them for our next door neighbor. And why would he say this? Why would anybody do something that's aggressive and then act like it's in defense? I will say why. Because you are not allowed conquest in the modern day. You are not allowed to be aggressive. You are not allowed to be seen as an aggressor in our modern day. It used to be different. I believe it used to be different, hundreds of years ago, when people were exploring and expanding, and there was territorial conquest going on and manifest destiny, as they call it. And these things were just, this is a good thing. We're doing this for our mother country. We're going to other countries. We are making a colony. We are colonizing the land. We are extracting the resources and sending it back home. We are expanding our empire. They used to say that the sun never sets on the British Empire because they used to own around half the world. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but there used to be British-owned territory everywhere, right? And so that was conquest. And now the social narrative, or the present or the modern day narrative, is almost always from defense. Why? Because you cannot say that you want to conquer something, or you want to take some land, or you want to get more resources. Obviously, that's what countries want. That's how they survive. That's how the nations become rich. That's how people get more money, get better cars, get better stuff. It's resources. Duh. But the thing is that you cannot really be seen as doing that in an unfair way. And so the rules of the game now are that you have to, if you're doing something defensively, that's fair. Okay, you were going to be attacked, that's fair. I understand that. That's how everything is set up nowadays. And they say something about Jewish people. They say, and I know people would say this is anti-Semitic, but it's actually very true, that the Jew cries out in pain as he strikes you. That's because it's from defense. People think that they're being attacked, and in this, I'm just using that, but I don't really want to go heavy into that part of it. But I'm more focused on the narrative of defense. It's like, if somebody hits you and they say, well, you were going to hit me, that's why I hit you. And if someone hits you and they're crying out in pain and they strike you, it's like the reason they would do that, or a potential reason, is because it's seen as acceptable. If you are going to be attacked, then it's seen as okay to defend yourself, self-defense. So honestly, I really wanted to make that point because that's how everything is nowadays. It's like everyone's on guard, everyone's in a state of defense. Offense is not okay, from people's perspective, and that is open offense, being openly offensive. And by offense, I mean saying, you know what, we wanted the oil, we went and we took the president out, and we're going to put in a new president who will allow us to take the oil. And why? Well, we wanted it. It's a resource. America runs on oil. America runs on resources and trade. And we wanted this resource because it benefits our people. You can't say that. So the whole time in the meeting, they were saying like, well, it's a win-win-win. That's what Darren Wood said. That's such a business term. He said, it's a win-win-win. We want it to be a win for the shareholders, for Exxon. We want it to be a win for the people of Venezuela. And we want it to be a win for the American people. Win-win-win. You know what I'm saying? So legitimately, that's how it almost has to be framed in modern day. Everything always, it seems to have to be framed in some sort of positive terms or some sort of like defensive terms. And personally, I think a lot of it's BS. I think a lot of people know that. But the reason I'm, expounding upon this point is because you cannot almost do anything otherwise. You have to have some sort of reason why you're doing something. And for the most part, it's like, well, it was in self-defense. And this is a huge freaking deal, let me tell you, because people use this all the time. They say, I was in fear for my life. I'm doing it for my family. When I was in British Columbia, I shouldn't have said that. Anyways, I said it now, but I was in that western province, and people would figure it out anyway by just me saying this, but there was this huge deal about forestry, and also I don't think anyone cares, but there was this huge deal about forestry, and because that whole land was being like pieced out, they were taking pieces of, they were extracting trees from pieces throughout the entirety of British Columbia. If you look at it on a map, it looks like a puzzle with a bunch of pieces pulled out of it. And a lot of people were upset about this. And then the people who were doing the work and the people who were supportive of it, they would say, forestry feeds my family. So, it's basically, it's self-defense from both sides, which is a weird scenario, but that's where we're at. It's like two fortresses shooting at each other a lot of the time, right? So I think that's probably like a broader point about tribalism and, but very, very defensive, narratives that go on. But they really do go on, and people really do use them, and people get really angry in use of them. Seriously, yeah. So, I just wanted to say that. And then I have another point to talk about, and this point is about, it's kind of separate, but I was thinking about this in the gym today as well. I was thinking about the individuality bound. So what I mean by that is, what is the bound of an individual? And I believe that, when thinking about an individual, you're thinking about what their personality is. And I'm thinking about I'm talking about, when I say the individuality bound, what I mean is, who are you as an individual? That's the point. And what the bound is your personality, really. And or at least that's probably a very good way to think about it. That might not be everything, but what makes up a person's personality? It's based on inter-judge agreement. Okay, so inter-judge agreement, that is, in personality psychology, David C. Funder, he said, the closest available proxy of truth is interjudge agreement. What that means is what people agree on, that's the closest we have to truth when it comes to personality. And so I just want to give an example of that. If you ask about like half of the US, what's Trump's personality, they'll say he's a maniac, he's insane, he's a dictator, he's a despot, he's a lunatic, he's a hustler, he's a scam artist. Basically, they won't have anything good to say about him. But if you ask the other half, they'll say he's a straight talker, he cares about America, he's a patriot, he is he's a real American, he's America first, he's doing good for the country, he's, I don't know, but they'll have something good to say about him. So what is his personality, right? That's the question. And it gets hard to really figure that out because people don't agree. Obviously, millions of people do agree on both sides with each other, but they disagree at a large amount. There are more people who agree that he's good for the country. That's why he got elected. But yeah, that's a major example, and I want to use another major example. Hitler. Who is Hitler? And I don't want to stay on this one too long, but my point with bringing this one up is if you asked any of the Germans, and I'm not trying to make some kind of weird equivocation between Trump and Hitler, but the point is about polarizing people and personalities. The people who were in Germany, he had a huge approval rating. And then now everybody's like basically trained to hate Hitler. And that's another point about the personality thing. And people would say, oh, he has a amazing charisma. I think everybody agrees on that. But a lot of people would say that he's deceptive, or other people would say that he is sincere, right? That he cared about the country, or that he was just trying to dominate the world. And a lot of people like to draw the connection between the two, Trump and Hitler. But what about another personality? Let's use a different one. Okay. I mean, I can't not think of any controversial examples. Okay, Joe Rogan. A lot of people hate him. A lot of women hate him. But it's the same thing, and the same principle holds true among all these different people. And you could say also for Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi. You could say for a whole bunch of different people. You're always going to have a section of people who agree on what that person was, especially with big personalities and like world famous personalities. You're going to have a section of people who agree on what this person's personality is, and in that way it's the closest we have to truth. But the weird thing is that there are also sections of people who kind of disagree, and then so it's like, well, is that the truth about who this person is? And I always found this very like confusing, honestly, because it gets tricky, because it's like, how do you even agree on anything when people kind of disagree on mostly everything? And there's sort of like a safe route to take, but is that the real route? Is that the true route? Even Jesus, Christians, obviously, his followers, like myself, we revere him as God. And people who do not follow him, I've heard a bunch of different things. They say, oh, he was a prophet, but nothing more. Or he was a very wise man. Or, people say, oh, he was made up. It's all a delusion. Or people will say, Jewish people will say he was a false Messiah, at the best, they will say about him, or a rebel who got killed for his trouble. That's what Shapiro said, Ben Shapiro. But what Jews really think, they hate him. They think he was a heretic and a sorcerer. And in the Talmud, they write about him as like the bad disciple and the bad student and everything. But it's kind of my point, is that that is the bound of an individual. What people agree on, okay? And so we can spend a lot of time on individuality, but I think that really defines the bound of an individual's personality. And I would say that the individual and the collective, that is a group of people, are necessary for each other. Not only for just defining the individual, you need other people to be able to even have a personality in a sense, or to get feedback about what your personality is. Otherwise you might not even really know, or you'd have a different opinion. And you can disagree with people because you're a judge as well in that interjudge agreement. But you do need a collective or a group of people. And I'm wondering, actually, what is the bound of the collective? And I think this is a really, really important question, and it's the other side of the coin or something like that, the other face, but because you have the individual and you have the collective. As soon as you have two people, that's a collective. But when I talk about collective, I'm talking about like an entire country, or the totality of humanity, like every human out there. Or I'm talking about even the potential of every human. That's another question too. But what's the bound of the collective? And this is an important question, because it's like, what's the personality of the nation? What is the identity of the nation? What makes up a Canadian? What makes up an American? What makes up a European? What makes up an African? What makes up a Chinese person? What makes up a Hawaiian? What makes up a indigenous American? These things are really important, actually, and I don't think people give them enough credit. But the group identity aspect is super important. Like, seriously, for happiness, for life, for getting along and getting through the world, and succeeding and enjoying the world, right? But and also for getting back to God, right? The church is supposed to be the body of Christ. So in a way, the church is kind of like, it's a part of the personality of God, I guess you could say, being the body. Obviously God is the Godhead, the Holy Trinity, but the church is the body. And that is the group of Christians, the people who follow the church, or who follow Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God the Father Almighty. So, but yeah, I was interested about what are the bounds of the collective, and I think this is a really important question, because that's what everybody really is. That's what people are talking about when they say that Europe is changing. These places are no longer recognizable. You see these videos of like a market in France, and it's all black people. It is all people from Africa. You look in Italy, there's like videos out there, anybody can see this. It's so prevalent, it's so obvious. And entire sections of cities are like migrants and immigrants and illegal immigrants, and who even knows. But you compare that just to a video from like 30 years ago, and unrecognizable. They're completely different. The buildings are the same, right? Mostly. But the people and the culture and what people are doing and what language people are speaking and the overall flow and the vibe, it's like, dude, unrecognizable. It's gone. And it's actually sad. Like, there's parts, in these videos, sometimes they show off like the worst of the worst, but there are parts that are still the same. But the point is that things are changing. And the point is that what is the bound of the nation? Well, a lot of people say that a nation is its people. That is what makes up a nation. It's not just the land. It's actually the people. Pretty good point, and I kind of agree with that. And I think there's a relationship between the two, the land and the people. But I would say when you think about a German, you think about probably a white person. If you think about a Swede, you probably think about a white person. If you think about a Canadian, you used to think about a white person. Now, if you think about an Indian, East Indian, you would think about, South Asian, dark-skinned person. But the thing is, for those first examples, that's not, it's like barely even true now. And it's changing so much. And it's also, you can't even really talk about it. Well, you can talk about it, but people don't want to talk about it. Let's put it that way. In everyday conversation and stuff like that. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the bounds of an individual and the bounds of a collective. Now, I will move on to my next topic. I have another one. And these are just stuff I was thinking about today. I get these kind of ideas and I write them down, like when I'm at the gym. And I really like talking about them. It's very enjoyable, cathartic in a way. Although I'm careful about catharsis. I saw something about catharsis is only healthy. Sometimes it's not even healthy, but I think catharsis, when done the right way, is healthy. And that's like, it's like an old word for releasing some sort of something inside, some sort of emotion. Okay, so the next topic I want to talk about is saying I love you to people. So this is just a short one, but if you say I love you to somebody, that's something I've been trying to do more of. And at church, I did tell a few people, I think like 4 people, I think. I said, I love you, my friend, have a good week. I love you, Father, have a good week. I told a few people that. And it's honestly hard. It's not easy to do that, okay? And you could know somebody for years and never say, I love you, or show any kind of affection in that way on like a deeper level. And then just both people be guessing and wondering. But the reason I said that is because that's what Jesus tells us to do. He tells us to love one another. It's the second, or attached to the first greatest commandment, to love God above all things. And it's the instruction of Jesus. So I said it to these people, and honestly, it's, I'm kind of worried about it. Just to be honest. The reason I'm worried is because, I have an anxious avoidant attachment style. And I've talked about attachment styles before, but that is how you relate to other people, basically entirely. And it's called your attachment style. And the point is just like, if you're anxious, you want people to be closer than you feel that they are. That's what anxiety is. It's like, or within relation to people, you want them to be closer to you than you feel that they really are. You want them to tell you more. You want them to spend more time with you. You want them to open up more, or reassure you more, or something along these lines. That's anxious attachment style. And a certain amount of that is, probably still secure, but I'm talking like that's when people are really like that a lot, and that they get called clingy or something. But the other one is avoidant, and that is like, whoa, okay, too much. Whoa, okay, just, I'm going to go over here. All right, see you later. That's like avoidant, right? And that's whenever you feel like things are getting a little bit too, touchy-feely or too intense or too much, then it's like, okay, I'd rather avoid that, because you sense conflict, or you sense that it could lead to something you don't want. So that would be avoidant, right? You feel that people are trying to get closer than you feel comfortable with them being. And then a combination, because you can have that, is the anxious avoidant, sometimes called disorganized. And that is when you want people to be close, but not that close. And you want people to be far away, but you're lonely, so you also want them to be kind of close. So, and it's kind of really painful to have that one. Okay, so why do I bring that up? Because saying I love you to people, it activates, my attachment style, and it also activates the other person's attachment style. So this is where things get complicated, obviously, if they weren't enough already. So people really think about these things in terms of themselves. That's how a lot of people think, is in terms of themselves, and they're calculating and thinking about their life, and like thinking about things in terms of themselves and how to act, with this new information. But the thing is, though, everybody's got an attachment style. Around 50% of people have a secure attachment style, and then the other 50% is split between the other three attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, or anxious avoidant, sometimes called disorganized. But the thing is, if you tell somebody you love them, and this is kind of my fear, to be honest, it activates their attachment style as well. And for me, I'm just like, I don't know if I can deal with all of that. That's why it's hard to do that stuff. Because in the past, and this is, how it obviously relates to your life growing up, you get your attachment style from your parents. You get it from usually your primary caregiver, your mother, but you can also get it from your father as well. And it's learned, and it's felt and it's learned from when you were young. And it's like you observe how your parents interact with each other. You observe how your family interacts with each other. You go out, and then you're kind of like exploring the world. And the whole thing about an attachment style when you're a child is that you go out, like your parent is like here, and this is what children do. And the same thing with adults, actually, in a way, but they're next to their mom, and they're like, their mom reassures them or something, or their father maybe, and then they go out and they play. And then, something scares them, they go back. And then they're with their parent, and they feel, oh, okay, everything's good. And then they're kind of curious again, and they go out and they play further and further and further. And this keeps happening until you're going out and spending a lot of time with your friends, and then going out and finding a new relationship and starting the cycle, I guess you could call it, or the spiral maybe, again, with your own family. And this should be really satisfying, I think. This should be really like deeply satisfying, but that's just me speculating. But yeah, it wasn't like that for me, and it's not been like that for a ton of people. But that's like the very core basic of human attachment as, social animals. And the thing is that these words, you say, I love you to somebody, I think it can really, activate this kind of attachment style for a lot of people. So that's why I'm kind of nervous about it. You know what I mean? It just kind of makes me nervous about the consequences thinking about now am I on the hook in some way, but I don't think I should really think of it like that. Just kind of like trust that it'll be okay. So yeah. So that's my point about attachment styles. And then I also wanted to talk about okay, then the other thing I was thinking about was the hardest part about having mentally ill family or family members. And this is a pretty tough topic. These are all pretty tough topics. This is the kind of stuff that I think about and I deal with. But I just want to acknowledge it's kind of a tough topic. But I have some. I think it's true. I think I have some true things to say about it. But the hardest thing about having a mentally ill family member or members or parents is that you can never really relax. It feels like you can never succeed or achieve as easily. And it's always on your mind that these people, your family or whoever it is, are unwell. And it's a real drain on in the back of your mind, subconsciously. It's like a drain, and it's really difficult. And I find that to be the hardest part. And I think that very well what unwell means and how it's seemingly always there. And I don't want to sound like condemning or anything. I just want to acknowledge reality, because I've dealt with this kind of stuff my whole life with my mom, with my different siblings, with even with like friends and stuff, or people that I've known or got into relationships with sometimes. Not always, but it's like it's like pattern recognition at first, perhaps, but that pattern recognition can receive a label at some point, which is these different mental health labels, and it's actually really hard to even get to that point sometimes. But I would say that it's very hard because you kind of get hit with all these different stories a lot, especially when you're growing up, that you can succeed no matter what, and then you hear people's inspiring stories about how they succeeded in spite of the family challenges, and they did it for their family and stuff like this. But not like that for everybody. I think that it can be really hard, and it can be like a daily struggle, and it can be like I don't even know how to put it, but yeah, I would just give an example from my own life, like my mom being homeless. Like, this is not an easy thing I think for anybody. Like the questions are obvious. It's like, why, and so and it feels very embarrassing, feels very shameful on me, on the family, and it's just like nobody wants to deal with it, and it's just like everybody kind of goes kind of quiet, and then they start talking about something else, and you kind of wonder like, why is nobody dealing with this? Why does nothing change? And yeah, and it's difficult because it's like, and I'm not trying to really be mean here to my mom or anything, but again, it's hard to acknowledge reality. Because sometimes reality sounds mean, but I'm trying to put it as almost like as neutrally as possible, which is honestly really hard. But it's frustrating because it's like she never has her life figured out. My dad has all these problems too, and again, I'm not trying to like I don't know, put down my family, but I'm just saying that it really puts a burden on everybody else. Seriously. And it's like nobody can say it because that would be a mean thing in some way, but it legitimately is hard. I just have to make that point. legitimately, it's so difficult. And then also like the comparison when you see other people's families or what like a healthy family is, or you think about what a healthy family is, especially when you're growing up, at least for me, you're kind of always trying to like figure out like, okay, well, how is this supposed to work? Like, is our family gonna do anything nice? Are we ever gonna, you know, um, have any kind of like good times? And whenever we do have, quote unquote good times, why do they always go haywire? Why does somebody always have a freak out? Why is it that everybody's always like snickering or cynical about it, that things are gonna go horribly right away? And it's like, dude, it's like, it's maddening. It's really difficult. Um, and so that's my point. My family has very big problems. And I think a lot of people's families do, especially now that we live in wackier and wackier times. So it's kind of relatable to people in perhaps a way, maybe not to everybody, but it's a real blessing if your family is doing well. But I would say that another thing is that a family, they reorganize around the mental illness or around the dysfunction. So a family, this is almost like a weird point to have to make, but a healthy family, I think it should have two parents, a man and a woman, and it should have, children, and then at least one, and that would make a family, right? But everybody wants to talk about, well, what could it be? Could it be just one person and a child? Could it be like a group of misfits that listen to punk music? Is that a family? And so the term itself has been extremely distorted. But I'm talking about like what a healthy family should look like. I think is like two parents, a mother and a father, and at least one child. And then there should be stability, right? It should meet the hierarchy of needs for the different people. At the bottom, there should be shelter. There should be food. And then, you go up a little bit, and eventually you get to love and kindness to each other. And the problems, when they arise, the family can figure it out and work on them together. But when your family is like mentally ill, or somebody has a mental illness in your family, the whole family, it's like it reorganizes around that illness. Like if the child has autism or something, it's almost like the family sometimes reorganizes around it, and then not always in the best way, right? So, and I would say that, people try their best, but I would say that if the parents have some sort of illness or something, it's like extremely difficult for the children. That's me saying that from experience. And I would say that the norms get played around with to reorganize around mental illness on a societal level, like a societal narrative level. And does that equal healthy? I don't think so. I think that the society also can become sick. And I think that the society is kind of sick because, the norms are like crazy in society. So, just speaking as somebody who lives in Canada in 2026, but, so I just kind of wanted to talk about all that. Yeah. But, I would say that that's pretty much everything. I think that the norms part is kind of a very important one. This is again about the collective, but the collective, what does the collective think? What does the collective consider to be important for each other? Does the collective, and I mean like the group or the country, you know, however people are held together, does the collective think that certain things are valuable or important? The answer is yes, but what are those things, right? So, yeah, big questions, I would say. Yeah, big questions. But yeah, it's helpful for me to talk about it. Here's my cat. All right.